Yesterday, we told you the story of the tragedy in the lives of Larry and Jackie Swick of Shawnee. Concerned neighbors contacted In Your Corner, so I paid the family a visit. Larry had been having employment problems, but all that was overshadowed by a worse tragedy, the loss of a son last Saturday.
Well, my son got hit by a car and was killed. And then Monday, a guy ran a stop sign and totaled out our car.
So you got no transportation now?
No.
How old was the boy and what was his name?
His name was Kevin Swick. He was 8 years old.
Let's see. It was a bicycle accident?
Yeah.
Let's see. Now the problem is you being unemployed and no transportation, everything. You want to send your son back to your home area in Ohio.
Yes. All of his grandparents are buried in the same cemetery back home, and we wanted him to be with them. We figured he'd sort of feel better.
The funeral for 8-year-old Kevin was yesterday. Expenses were covered by members of the community. The RSVP Club of the Senior Citizens Residence. School students collected money. The radio station solicited help. And there was help from the Roche Funeral Home. They made arrangements to fly the body back to the family burial plot in Ohio. But the expense of Larry and Jackie accompanying the body remained, over $1,000 in airfare. Well, after we aired that story, we had an unbelievable response from our viewers who wanted to help Mr. and Mrs. Swick accompany their son today. In 1 hour, enough donations were pledged to make it possible, and we were able to book the Swicks on the same flight as their son. It appears we may have received pledges for more than the $1,016 for the airfare. In that case, In Your Corner will forward the rest of the money to the Swicks to help care for their other 2 children while Larry looks for a full-time job. Also, the Swicks can use the money to put down on another car. The day after their son's accident, they were on the way to the funeral home when they were hit by a motorist that had no insurance. The Swicks' car was demolished, so any funds over the price of airfare could be used toward another car. Larry and Jackie Swick expressed their gratefulness to many kind people who dug into their pockets so they could make this trip today. In Your Corner continues to hear from many viewers who had portraits taken by Cameo Studios. Many wanted the pictures for Christmas presents. Many paid money down when they had their sitting and ordered their pictures, and many were upset when they never got their pictures and couldn't find anyone at the studios. Cameo moved out of their office overnight without leaving any notice to their customers about their pictures or their money. One of the victims was Northeast High School.
The individual pictures that were going to be put together to make the memory made. Okay, for the band. Then we lost the all the basketball pictures. We lost the wrestling pictures. We lost the cheerleader pictures.
And another victim I talked to said her family got the runaround trying to collect their pictures.
We finally just called him and told him, that we wanted our money back because he said he still couldn't find the pictures.
Yeah.
And he said, okay, he'd give us our money back on Thursday. And then that's when my husband went down there to pick up the money, and it was locked up. And so we came home and called him, and then we got a recording saying that the number had been disconnected.
I learned that a man named Gary Purcell of El Reno was the owner of Cameo, and a man named Tom Powell ran the business. However, no one seemed to know where to find them. Well, I traced Tom Powell, the manager of Cameo Studios, to here, a lounge at the intersection of 10th and May. Now, Powell refused to go on camera, but he said his attorneys would contact us tomorrow, and at that time he would talk with us and explain his side of the story. And he said they were working on a plan to make sure that everybody got their pictures, but he would not explain what that plan was. Powell said he would do an interview with me after he talked to his attorney. However, attorney Dick Rouse said neither Powell nor Purcell would go on camera. But he said they had devised a plan to deliver everybody's pictures. Northeast High is to get theirs in 30 days and individual customers in 60 days. That would mean everybody would get their missing photographs by the 1st of April. That's April Fool's Day. And anyone who fears they may be fooled, that the Cameo personnel may leave town in those 30 to 60 days, may sue them in small claims court for the money or their pictures. In Your Corner first looked into lemon laws when we received a complaint from Karen Teeters. You may remember her problem. Karen had bought a Corvette. It was a demonstrator, but it had a new car warranty on it. What it didn't have on it was a good paint job, and that led to a great deal of frustration over a car that cost nearly $19,000. Original paint job?
No, they pointed it out to me that the car had a bad paint job on it and that they would repaint it. Since it was under warranty, it'd be no extra charge or anything.
And not only did they repaint it once, but they had to do it over again, didn't they?
And it's about the 5th or 6th time they've painted it.
And what do they tell you each time when you take it in?
That they don't know why the paint won't stick to the car. Mad's not the word for it. I'm furious. I just feel like I'm shelling out close to $400 a month for a car that I don't get it. You know, I don't get to drive the car. Nothing at all.
Karen had purchased the car from Allen Merrill Chevrolet in Yukon, where the car was to be painted. Well, while it sat there, not getting done, she was still making payments on the car and on the expensive car insurance. Well, Karen went the normal route for getting help. She called the General Motors zone office.
I called the zone office, and when they got back in touch with me, they give me one reason why it's not done. I called Michigan, and they give me another reason why it's not done. I asked the guy who runs the body shop, and he gives me a third reason why it's not done.
Well, in the meantime, the Chevy dealer changed hands, so the new owner inherited the problem and was trying to get a good paint job on Karen's car. I talked with her again 3 months later.
That paint job is the 8th paint job in 13 months, and it's still not right. They seem to be unable to locate what's the problem with my alarm system. Can't get that to work. Took the door panels off today, put that back together, and didn't do it right. My door handles are about to come off.
Is it worth $18,000 for this?
No.
Do you think Oklahoma needs a lemon law?
Yes, I do.
Well, the states of Connecticut and California have passed lemon laws, which require car manufacturers to either refund the money or replace a new car that is deemed a lemon, a car that can't be repaired after several attempts. Oklahoma State Senator E.W. Keller has introduced such a bill in our state legislature. He says it helps define what a lemon is.
The definition is that it is a car that has, where there's been an attempt to repair the same difficulty more than 4 times without success. That would be a lemon if the attempted repairs were made during the warranty period. Another would be that if during the warranty period, or 1 year, the car were in for repairs for a period of more than 30 days total, that would be a lemon.
The lemon law proposal is in the Senate Judiciary Committee at present. If they deem it worthy, they'll release it to the full state Senate for consideration. But Senator Keller says there will be a lot of opposition from car manufacturers. At least one is already lobbying against it here. If you think a lemon law will help protect Oklahoma's new car buyers, Senator Keller suggests you call your state legislator and ask for his support on the bill. Seraphia Fleming called In Your Corner to see what could be done about the Wheatley Supply Company, her former employer. She became connected with Gary Wheatley when she answered an ad in the newspaper. The ad was for a sales job, which Seraphia accepted. She would work for Gary Wheatley selling advertising materials to businesses, pens, and other novelty items that a business could put their names on. Well, Seraphia and the other salespeople took the orders and the money and turned it over to Gary, and soon there was trouble.
What I found was that some of the orders hadn't even been placed to the company, which means he had no intention of even supplying the merchandise.
So you checked with the manufacturing
Sure.
company, and they hadn't received the order?
Some of the orders.
Some of
When
them.
I couldn't get any information from him and I couldn't get him to return my calls, and I'd go and wait on him at the office, and he never would show up, I called the manufacturer to see if I could get some information from them. And after several calls to them, then they told me the orders he had turned in, and some of my personal orders hadn't even been turned in. My first order in August hadn't been turned in October.
Wheatley left Serafia and the other salespeople in a tough spot because their customers were not getting the orders they paid for, and the salespeople were not getting their sales commissions. Serafia alone had sales of nearly $1,000. I found several businesses had filed suit against Wheatley for not delivering their items. A radio station in El Reno was suing him for advertising time he bought in their station but never paid for. The list goes on, but no one could find Wheatley. Wheatley's office was here in the Founders Tower. Now, he did not leave any forwarding address when he closed up and disappeared. However, I learned of a person that's been picking up his messages here. She had Wheatley get in touch with me by telephone. Now, Wheatley will not reveal his present address, but he did say he'll see that everyone gets their money back. He said he had to close his office here because they simply ran out of money. He said he did not turn in some of his employees' orders because he had to use that money for office expenses. Now, Wheatley says he's in another sales business now, but he will see that everyone gets paid back from his last sales venture. And former saleswoman Serafia Fleming says that's part of what she is hoping for.
He needs to pay the people who place these orders their cash back. And then he needs to not do this anymore.
Rod Leonard called in your corner to ask about a parking space. He lives here at the Regency Tower Apartments in downtown Oklahoma City. There are no parking spaces reserved for handicap parking. So Rod says he's parking across the street right now, wheeling his battery-powered wheelchair through traffic to his van. Rod needs an extra wide parking space because he gets in and out of his van on a power lift at the side door. Rod wants the Regency to give him a space in the sheltered parking lot. Now, they've offered him one, but it's the maintenance man parking space right outside the front door of the apartments. A convenient spot, they say, but Rod objects because when he used the spot, he was parked in several times. Regency officials say they won't let that happen, and in fact, even had a car towed for blocking in the van. Another objection is that when Rod comes out of his side door in the van, it puts him right in the line of traffic of cars entering the sheltered parking areas. Well, that could be dangerous, Rod says. It would be safer if they could take one of the regular parking spaces or a visitor space and set it aside for the handicapped, he thinks. Regency security guard says they would have to widen a regular space by 4 feet, which would cause them to lose another parking space. And they're at a premium there. So are the visitor spots. He says that's why Regency is willing to give Rod the maintenance parking space. He says before Rod declined to use it, they were willing to paint it and put signs up reserving it for the handicapped. But Rod raises the question of whether apartment buildings are required by law to provide handicap parking and to make them to certain specifications. Well, I took his question to Larry Bishop of the Office of Handicap Concerns for Oklahoma. Larry says such requirements are vague, sort of a gray area.
If it's an existing apartment complex, if they're already built, there's not a requirement that they go back in and make those parking spaces there, unless they do some kind of remodeling or resurfacing of a parking lot or something like that. Now, if for some reason they receive federal money, perhaps if there's people, if they are a federally subsidized project, if there may be people living in the complex that receive Title VIII housing assistance, that may subject the complex to compliance with the federal statutes, which means that they would have to have their programs and their facilities accessible.
Only
if there's a connection to federal funding, though. Really, there is no legal obligation to put in a handicap parking space unless there's some kind of reconstruction. There's a wide gap here between what's legally required and what's fair.
With that in mind, I checked with the Department of Housing and Urban Development to see if the Regency had a federal connection, one sufficient to require it to comply with the federal handicap regulations. HUD says no. Now, the apartments are in bankruptcy, but the court treats it as if it is privately owned. So Rod will have to take whatever parking they decide to give him, and the Regency apartments think they have been fair with him. State Senator E.W. Keller introduced the lemon law, and it is now under consideration in the Senate Judiciary Committee. If they vote against it, the law will not get out of committee for consideration by the full state Senate. Today, a hearing was held for the public to comment on the need or the lack of need for such a law. Senator Keller explained to the committee his law would define just exactly what new cars would be considered lemons. No law makes that distinction now. The bill would also require a car manufacturer to replace a lemon car or to give the customer his money back. New cars that qualify as lemons under this bill are those that go back to the dealer 4 times for the same repair and still don't work, or those that sit in the repair shop for a total of 30 days during the warranty period. It must be a defect that affects the use or value of the car. The senator says such laws are passed now in 2 states and under consideration in 17 others.
There are 3 other states at the present time which are due to pass this law. They've gone through committee, and that's New Hampshire, Maine, and Minnesota. And I understand Minnesota passed it through committee last week, and it's going to a vote this week.
In Your Corner was asked to present a couple of cases we have worked on involving cars with continued repair problems whose owners received no satisfaction after seeking help from the car manufacturers.
He thinks for $9,400, everything should be right about that car.
Also speaking today were several parties who opposed the lemon law. The first was a General Motors representative.
We really feel that this is unnecessary legislation because there are avenues in Oklahoma right now that are available to the consumer. And if you've got John Connor's letter, which is included in this package on the last page, you'll see that the Oklahoma Motor Vehicle Commission has remedial procedures, the Oklahoma Used Motor Vehicle and Parts Commission, the Consumer Protection Division, the Office of the Attorney General, and the Oklahoma Consumer Credit Commission all have remedial procedures that could conceivably step in where the manufacturer or the dealer or the consumer didn't get rectified. Now, obviously, a lot of times it's a communications breakdown between the manufacturer, the dealer, or the consumer himself, and often it's just a part or a motor or a transmission that needs to be replaced, and not necessarily the entire car.
Now, General Motors has its own arbitration plan for resolving consumer complaints. The plan works through the Better Business Bureau if it can be shown the problem is caused by a manufacturer's defect. Jane Harden of the Better Business Bureau testified that arbitration plan with GM is working. She also stated that the Bureau will arbitrate problems with other car manufacturers that don't have their own plans. That is voluntary. Harden also commented that a lemon law is unnecessary here because there are fewer complaints about cars from consumers these days.
The complaints are about 10 per day, and that certainly is a reduction from this time 10 years ago. 10 years ago, complaint problems were on the top 10 of the top 10 areas of complaint activity in Oklahoma. Today, that automobile repair problems are not on the top 10 areas of complaint activity filed at the Better Business Bureau office.
Well, after questioning by Senator Keller, Harden said she would not object to defining which cars are lemons. Keller says his bill will do that, and those that have lemons first will be required to go through any manufacturer's arbitration plan. Then, if not satisfied, they can seek their refund or a new car. Have you seen this person? 19-and-a-half-year-old Bobby Thomas of Midwest City. He's been missing since he attended a party with friends in Yukon Saturday night, January 22nd. Bobby's father, Robert Thomas, says he has no idea what happened to his son, but has spent a lot of time the last few weeks trying to find out. He turned in a missing person report to the Yukon Police Department 24 hours after the disappearance. Police will not take a missing person report until 24 hours have elapsed. Mr. Thomas was not pleased with the response.
Their response initially was that, he's probably just missing. He probably just decided to do something else with his life, It took me a couple of days to convince him he was not that kind of individual and that he would not walk away from all the things he had. Finally, once we became aware that a fight had taken place and that he had been involved with some people out there that are kind of shady characters, in this fight, then they began to take it serious.
This missing person report started here at a private party at the Yukon Roundup Club on a Saturday night just a few weeks ago. Some witnesses told police it was a wild party, alcohol consumed, some allege marijuana was smoked, and there was some fighting apparently. Some witnesses say Bobby became involved in a fight on the inside of the club, was escorted out to the parking lot, perhaps fought again. But what happened to Bobby after that is the mystery. Some witnesses said Bobby ran through the club gate in an intoxicated condition out towards Route 66. And police say 3 motorists saw Bobby a half-mile east of the club at the intersection of 66 and Mustang Road near the Moose Club. But Mr. Thomas, as a witness he talked to before the police, claimed Bobby was put in a pickup truck by 2 men.
Now, the chief in a newspaper interview said he expected foul play. That was 3 days after this occurred. There was still no search conducted at that time. No search was made of the area around there at that time. You know, even though they expected foul play, and even though he said he expected foul play, and we gave, not a demand, but we certainly requested strongly that the OSBI be called in at that time, they were not.
And Mr. Thomas claims an offer of a helicopter search by Oklahoma City Police was also turned down at that time.
It's not the type of case that you automatically go out and call in the OSBI, Oklahoma City PD, and the FBI, you know. There's just no facts leading us to believe that all the stories and rumors and so forth, suppositions, have any factual basis to it. And at that point, it's a waste of the taxpayers' money, even though we have a very distraught family to deal with, and very upset family. And, you know, my heart goes out to them. But
Yukon Police Chief Sam Irvin says they have a lot of reports of intoxicated persons disappearing temporarily. In this case, detectives had to sort out reports from people who were perhaps intoxicated at the party and confused. That took time. The report of Bobby being dragged away didn't work out, on the theory that he wandered away. They searched after receiving sightings, but the body should have been found by now. The chief says 3 weeks later, they're out of leads and ask for assistance from the OSBI. And Oklahoma City police choppers continue looking for Bobby. But they need your help. If you know anything about this case, you can call anonymously at 354-2554. Or you can call Mr. Thomas at 235-3620.
to believe that all the stories and rumors and so forth, suppositions, have any factual basis to it.
I want that charge off of my bill, and I want to quit being harassed, because to my way of thinking, I am being harassed by the telephone company.
Margot Godwin was pretty upset when she called in your corner. Margot has a secretarial service and some phone answering business included, so she needs her phones, but she was getting notices that her phones would be disconnected. Here's why. When her business was in a previous location, she bought advertising in the yellow pages of the West Suburban phone book. Her contract said when she moved and changed phone numbers, the contract would be terminated, but it wasn't. So she wrote the phone company letters asking that the billing be stopped, but it still wasn't. The charges remained on her bill for more than a year before they stopped. But 6 months later, an advertising charge appeared again on her phone bill, and an ad appeared in the yellow pages which she had not ordered, and it had her old phone number and address listed one place, and her new phone and address in another place. Margot was furious. She said she made so many calls to the phone company she was tired of explaining the problem. Well, In Your Corner talked to the district manager for directory sales, who said this was probably human error. Someone wrote the wrong phone number in a service order. They couldn't understand why it took so long to clear it up, but Margot tells us now the incorrect advertising charges of $1,000 have been removed from her bill, except for about $7. And the phone company's trying to determine where that came from, but they say that will be cleared up as well, and Margot is elated. In another recent report, Jeannie Alexander told me her family had been trying to get cable TV hooked up at their home for a year and a half, but couldn't. She felt it was because her side of the street was the only one in the neighborhood that had to have underground cable. Everyone else had above ground, making it easier to wire in. Well, she tried to order it again. Well, Cox Cable came out and signed her up January 10th of this year. She paid them, and they said her home would be wired up in a week, but it wasn't. And every time she called, she got this response.
I called back again, and he says, well, I still haven't heard anything from my supervisor. I don't know what the problem is. I says, well, I guess I'll have to check with other sources then. And that's when I called you.
Jeannie said she was never told any reason or any date for installation. I talked with Cox officials, and they said it was the weather. The ground was too wet to take their trenching equipment in. They would get more complaints if they left tire ruts in neighbors' yards. But as soon as it got a little drier, they said they would hook her up. Jeannie tells us they dug the trench Monday and hooked her cable TV up yesterday. Pastor Harrison said he and his wife were sponsoring the tour, which was to be a pilgrimage to Israel in the setting of the Bible. Arrangements for the trip began in November of 1981, and they were to leave September 1982. A deposit of $2,000 was made to Christian Tours International in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, that was arranging the trip. All that went all right. The trouble began when they tried to cancel the trip.
I canceled because of the increasing conflict in Lebanon, and I kept hoping that we could go. I knew I needed to cancel before the last date that I could get all of my money back for the people that had made reservations. And June the 28th was a month and 3 days before the July 27th final day to cancel without penalty. And I wanted to cancel because of the conflict in Lebanon.
Thought it might be dangerous to go over that part of the world at this time.
My people began to feel like that the tour should be canceled and rescheduled at a later time.
Well, Pastor Harrison said he followed Christian Tours regulations for canceling, and he expected to receive the $2,000 back to refund to his church members and others in Ada who had signed up for the trip. At the end of June, he tried to call Lenny Weingrad of the Christian Tour Company to ask about the refund.
I had made, on June the 28th, a letter to request cancellation and refund of the deposits. I did not hear from them, but I telephoned them that I hadn't heard from them, and it was almost a month later, on July the 23rd, that I received a pink slip to sign to send back to them stating that they would refund the money. And essentially that was the last correspondence I had with them. I did make a lot of telephone calls there, but they would always put me off, or they'd say that we'll call you back. And then I began other ways. I had a lawyer, a friend of mine, write a letter. I even wrote the Israeli government, and I sent certified mail. They wouldn't accept. The lawyer sent a certified letter. They accepted, but did not answer.
Pastor Harrison even contacted an official of the Israeli Tourism Bureau in Houston. That official contacted Christian Tours and said they would not refund the money, but there was still no explanation.
The people that made reservations paid $100 apiece. 3 or 4 of the group in my own church said that they was not going to take the money back until I got it myself. I paid some in my church. But to protect my good name and my church, I went ahead personally and paid back the $100 to each of the people outside my church that made reservations.
Well, I contacted Christian Tours International today and got a few answers. It seems they had put Pastor Harrison's deposit money down with Braniff Airlines. Braniff went out of business in May. Now the tour company is in court, they say, trying to get the money back to refund to Pastor Harrison and some other groups in the same predicament. Why that wasn't told to Pastor Harrison, Jeffrey Weingrad could not explain, and he wasn't sure if their insurance company or a bonding company would repay their customers. But he did tell me they would credit the $2,000 towards another trip with their company if the pastor chooses to sign up. Last Tuesday, the Senate Judiciary Committee held a public hearing on the Lemon Law bill, introduced by State Senator E.W. Keller. The senator explained the 2 states already had such a law. 17 others were looking into it. Keller said the bill would define what a lemon automobile is. In Senate Bill 140, it is a new car that has gone to the dealer 4 times for the same problem and still not fixed while under warranty, or a car that's been in the repair shop 30 days or more during the warranty period. Regardless of make, those cars, foreign or domestic, would be considered lemons, and the manufacturer would have to either replace the car or refund the owner's money. There was opposition to the bill from General Motors and Chrysler at last week's hearing, as well as from the Better Business Bureau, which conducts arbitration hearings for General Motors. Today, the Senate Judiciary Committee met to vote on the bill.
Last week, we were told about, somebody said it might cost 5 times for an automobile. They're going to raise the cost. They're going to cost more. And the pity toward General Motors. I don't know whether it's accurate information, but a week ago I heard that last year their net profit was in excess of $1 billion. So I don't want you all to worry about them too much. It's the consumer out there that gets a 3-year mortgage at high interest rates, that when he gets lemon, that's the one that hurts.
Senator Keller explained that his bill would require a new car buyer with a lemon to go through any arbitration plans the manufacturer has before seeking a replacement car or a refund. He said the bill would not cover minor defects in the car, only those affecting the use and the value. After the discussion today, a vote was taken.
Senator Keller.
Aye.
Senator Lamb.
Aye.
Senator Luton.
Aye.
Senator Pierce.
No.
Senator Tolliver.
No.
Senator Dawson.
Aye.
Senator Clifton.
No.
4 to 3.
So the first step has been taken in passing a lemon law for Oklahoma. Now the bill will go before the entire state Senate for consideration, then will have to be considered by the House, and if both pass it, it becomes law. But Senator Keller says it'll have a tough time because of the strong lobbying efforts of the car manufacturers who oppose it.